Good evening. My name is Paul Barrett. I'm the Dean of the College of Business and Economics here at Longwood University. I welcome you to the first of 4 executive residence programs this academic year. And buckle up. You're about to ride the fast train of global marketing and communications with tonight's speaker at the wheel. Our speaker is a groundbreaking leader at the intersection of operational performance and optimization of communication technology for industry giants globally. She will help us in our mission to prepare students to be tomorrow's effective citizen leaders, and I feel very fortunate to have her with us this evening. The theme of this year's Executive Residence Series is Competitive Leadership Values, and we will be learning more about how U.S. organizations provide valued leadership around the world. Our program is sponsored by Barrett Capital Management and Eagle Fire, and through their generous sponsorship, we are able to bring distinguished and influential business leaders to Longwood. Tonight's speaker will share her experiences and insights on entrepreneurship, innovation and product and logistics, and corporate responsibility, including the use of product development and technology to unleash the talent of human capital that inspires a healthy, active lifestyle for global consumers. When I think of our speaker this evening, I am reminded of the remarks made by Peter Drucker. This is the seminal thinker and author of important matters in politics, business, economics, and society. Considered by many to be the founding father of the discipline of management, Mr. Drucker said, and I quote, "There are many how-to-do-it books on management, but few tell the executive really what to do, let alone why or how." So then just what separates the great leaders from the also-rans? As Mr. Drucker points out, it's often just 2 things. The first is to focus on the opportunity, and the second is the consistent practice of innovation. Tonight's guest speaker is a terrific example of an executive who has the courage to embrace the power of an idea and how technological innovation and communication can splice together huge organizations that come together and create synergy as one functioning unit. And she has been successful over and over in these efforts, even when others perhaps might have perceived a challenging, if not impossible, culture divide to overcome. Let's see, what firms has she led as a change agent? How about Procter Gamble? How about the Gillette Companies? How about Nestlé? And oh, there's a little firm, Bristol-Myers Squibb. And today she's an important leader in one of the fastest growing companies in the world, Jamba Juice. And in these firms, she has been a marketing executive responsible for launching and expanding product lines and services that touch markets on various continents around the world. And by the way, certainly for the students, but all of us, let's listen carefully as our speaker talks about some of her intriguing insights into personal branding. If we all listen carefully, we will know that in everything our speaker does, she consistently shares the learned lessons of her success with others. I would say she is a Peter Drucker executive in action. And I thank her in advance for sharing her story with us this evening. Before our speaker is introduced, I would like to recognize our financial sponsors for tonight's program. Would you please stand? From Barrett Capital Management, we have with us the CEO, David Barrett. We also have from Eagle Fire, we have 2 sponsoring guests tonight, the CEO, Harry Hoffman, and Corey Nichols, Operations Director, Eagle Fire. I'd like to recognize one newbie. President of Longwood University, Taylor Reevely, is in the house tonight. "15 years from now, we're going to be making that same announcement." I'd also like to recognize the students that are sponsoring this event tonight. The student associations, all the members of the Marketing Association and the Retail Association. Would you please stand? All one of them. There we go. Thank you. Finally, it is my pleasure to present to you the individual who will actually introduce our guest speaker. Mr. Harold Hatchet III is a Longwood alumni and one of our most successful business school graduates ever. Amongst his many executive positions, he was Chief Financial Officer for the Shell offshore companies. Then he was Chief Operating Officer and Global Business Services Manager for Shell Finance Services. And he also held the position of Chief Investment Officer for Royal Dutch Shell, the largest corporation on the planet. He currently serves as Chief Financial Officer of an entrepreneurial firm that has developed a unique energy product for a global market. And today, he shares his wisdom with everyone he touches as the head of his consulting company. It's clear when Harold Hatchet talks about self-confidence and leadership, people listen. Please join me in welcoming to the stage one of Longwood's models for citizen leadership, Mr. Harold Hatchet.
Good evening, Longwood. Good evening. Come on, guys. Good evening, Longwood. Good evening. Thank you. First of all, students, this is why we're here, you guys. I sat where you guys sat, not in such nice seats as you guys are sitting in. I graduated from Longwood in 1983. And it has been a terrific honor and privilege to come back whenever I can to share some of my experiences with you guys. But first of all, I'd like to thank Dean Barrett. You have been an inspiration to this school, to this college of business and economics. And we are looking forward to many more years of your leadership and your vision. And we're so delighted to have our corporate board of advisors here tonight. And we talked about the sponsors, but I'd like for the entire corporate board, all the members who are here, to please stand. Also, it's a pleasure to always have the president of the university in the house. And Taylor, we just thank you, and we're looking forward to some wonderful things from you. And as I have stated many times before, we're here as your support system. So thank you for being here in the house. Okay? I'd be remiss not to thank my support system. First of all, I'd like to just introduce my wife, Charlize, to you guys. Please stand, Charlize. And please, my family from Kenbridge, Lunenburg County. My mom is here, my aunt, my stepfather, and a very distinguished professor many years here at Longwood. Would you guys please stand? I have the distinct honor to stand here before you tonight to just introduce such a phenomenal lady. Ms. Washington has been named one of the 50 most influential women in optical for the year of 2009. Also, 2010, she's top 100 most influential blacks in corporate America. 2012, most influential woman in corporate America. 2013, top women executives in advertising and marketing. And in 2013, top B2C marketing executive of the year. Ms. Washington is the chief brand officer for Jamba Juice. But she recently received a new title as well while she's doing the branding, the brand officer's position. She was named the president of a new line in a new company that Jamba bought called Talbott Teas. So she's the new president of Talbott Teas. Congratulations, Julie. Ms. Washington is an accomplished senior marketing and sales executive with careers spanning over a lot of different companies. Dean Barrett mentioned the companies that she led and was a part of. But I wanted to talk about where she matriculated. Julie received her Bachelor's of Art in Chemistry and Psychology from Emory University and her Master's of Business Administration from Washington University. Julie lives in Ohio, but Jamba is located on the West Coast in Emeryville. And she goes back and forth while having a family and a devoted wife. So it's tough being, one of those senior executives who always has to make sure that her family comes first, but also to be very creative in how she manages her job. But tonight, Longwood, we have the dynamic, sensational Julie Spencer Washington. Welcome to Longwood.
I only have 1 minute, only 60 seconds in it. Forced upon me, can't refuse it. Didn't seek it, didn't choose it, but it's up to me to use it. I must suffer if I abuse it, give an account if I lose it. Just a tiny little minute, but eternity is in it. Good evening, everyone. I am delighted to be here tonight, to have spent the time with you earlier today. But I only have a couple of minutes, and I am very much about intentionality and being purposeful. And so with that, I thank you for giving me some of your minutes of this night, but also of your life. And hopefully there's something that is said, a thought that is at least brought to the forefront of your mind that causes you to ponder a little bit longer, or better yet, to take an action that encourages your heart, clarifies something that's within your spirit, that because of the vision for the executives in residence, it provides you that opportunity. But it's not lost on me that you guys all had something else you could do tonight, but you decided to be here. And so for that, I thank you for your sacrifice, but also for being present with me. Thank you to Taylor for being so kind. I think this is the third or fourth time we've been together today, and I'm sure the Office of the President had many more things on your to-do list. So thank you as a new president to be here tonight with us here in the business school. Thank you, Paul. We've been talking for over a year, so it's more than my phone and email buddy. But yet, thank you, and thank you, Diane, for being with us. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you to Harold. Just so that you know, since we all didn't matriculate at the same university, Harold and I know each other from an organization called the Executive Leadership Council. And the ELC is an amazing organization, one where today we hold about 400 members that are part of the ELC, and it's of top executives inside of corporations that are African American. And so it is a set criteria of how far in the C-suite you are, and it is by invitation only. And so not only am I just always excited when I show up at an ELC meeting, but when you can build relationships with people such as Harold, it's truly exciting when your life moves beyond transactional moments of business to relational moments, that I get the opportunity to find out about a university that when Harold told me, I was like, Longwood, where is that? So I not only know where Longwood is, but I've had the good fortune of actually understanding your history and the importance that you've made to this country, and others have not yet heard your story. And so I will charge you, if you don't remember anything I say from this day forth, don't know what that lady said, but know that you left with a charge. You're not here by accident, you're here on purpose in a university that has a place in history, and it's up to you to tell the Longwood story. All right, so there are a whole lot of ambassadors. Paul doesn't have to tell it. Taylor doesn't have to tell it. Everybody here can tell the story. So at the end of the day, I am grateful for this opportunity tonight. Thank you to Harry and Corey and to David for making the investment, because I wouldn't be here without you. So thank you for doing that. So the title around competitive leadership values, I'm going to talk a little bit about more from a personal branding standpoint, because I see each of us as a brand. And when you understand your purpose for being and where you're going, that will then allow you that opportunity to clearly understand how to more effectively compete. Every last one of you that are seniors, you're going to all show up in your great blue or gray suit, and you're going to have a resume that looks like everybody else's resume, that's on some beautiful paper, that's wonderfully typed, and it's one page, and it says all the right keywords. But why are you going to be remembered? And so for that, I challenge you that hopefully there's something here that helps you see with a little bit more clarity why you're here, what you're going to do to differentiate yourself. And that's what I've tried to do throughout my career as well as through my life. So with that, I have a couple of minutes, and then I hope we will have Q&A. And if not, guess what? I have a couple of plants, because every good speaker has somebody in the audience that will not be bashful to say anything. So I think this is my clicker. And those, for students, if you want to take notes, you can. I tried to make sure that sometimes it's hard to listen, absorb, and then also remember, what did she say? So a couple of things are going to be on the slide for you as key takeaway. So what will we cover tonight? I'll talk a little bit about personal branding. At lunch today, Jerome asked the question about branding versus marketing. And so I'll talk a little bit more about what I define as branding. The second piece that we'll go through are my leadership philosophies. So I spent some time at Procter Gamble, and they are one of the most intentional organizations I've ever been a part of. And so everybody has a leadership philosophy that spent a day inside of the institution of Procter Gamble. And so only to make it clever and creative, as a marketer, I came up with 5 Ps for my philosophy. And then I will share leadership values, and it's within the philosophy that I have and the values that I embrace that truly define my competitive advantage. So we'll go through my 5 Cs. And then I'll talk a little about the lessons that we learn. So after you finish any class, I believe that you should walk away saying, well, what did I get for the time that I invested in, as well as that the professor invested in me, as well as into the other students. So if we don't take lessons from life, I at least believe you have to repeat said lesson. So you know, when you don't do well on a test, sometimes there's the opportunity to retake that particular test, because you need the information in order to move forward. And then the last piece, I'll talk a little about the personal beliefs that drive me and that ultimately provided me the opportunity to stand where I am within corporations, to have the impact and the influence and have fun while doing it. And so yes, you can go to work and have fun. So that's what we're going to cover. So hold me true to my promise of the material and the content. But first, let's talk a little bit about the definition. So personal branding, as I at least define it, it's the word or the phrase that comes to mind when we say Dean Barrett. You've had an exchange, you've had a thought, you have an opinion. Even before he said anything, when you showed up on campus, there was something about the institution, about his leadership, about his brand that was true in your mind. He hadn't even validated it. He didn't give you other information, but you came in here believing something. When I actually walked on the stage, for those of you that did not know me, had not had an exchange, you made certain assessments about my brand based upon what I look like, and then when I opened my mouth, what I said. You've already formed an opinion, so either I'm going to prove that that is true, or I'm going to hopefully change the opinion of, oh, maybe I'm not that wicked crazy lady. I'm actually really okay, right? So hopefully my brand shows forth. But I think an important piece of any brand, because no matter if I was at Procter & Gamble and we're looking at toothbrushes, toothpaste, deodorants, shampoos, it's not what you say you are, it's what your consumers say you are. And I think, as you guys know, as being a part of the millennial generation, it is really, really critical to make sure that perception and reality come together. Because I could have intentions for one thing, but if you perceive me as something different, that means that's who I am. It's how you actually saw me, not how I intended for you to see me. So that's what most marketers are always, day in and day out, trying to seek consumer research. So for those of you that are interested in consumer research, you're a vital part of the story of a brand, because I need to know what consumers are saying, not what am I saying to them, but what they're saying to me and about me in order for me to be validated as the brand that I am. And I think the other word on this slide that's important is consistently. Because just as a friend, if you're in a sorority, if you're in a fraternity, it's hard to count on people who are one way on Monday and another way on Tuesday, and another way on Wednesday, and oh, by the way, they're supposed to be on your team, and you have a team project to do. Just a little bit difficult to nail them down to say, I have no idea what this person is going to do, whether I can count on them, but as a brand, you must be consistent. If I told you, if I was a Tide brand manager, that I was going to clean clothes, you're expecting me to clean the clothes. So whatever it is, it's my promise, then at the end of the day, that is my job to actually deliver on the promise. But it's only after I've consistently performed that I can validate that my promise is true, and the brand that I purport to be, I actually am. That sometimes takes some brands longer than others, but part of that is also about our points of differentiation. So that's my personal definition of branding, and I see myself as a brand. And so maybe if we were talking to Harold, maybe as a finance person, a CFO wouldn't say that they're a brand, but I see everybody in a room that I'm in as a brand. And you just don't know, but you're in a package already. From what you decided to wear, you're representing your brand. I taught at a class at Xavier University, and a young man walked in and he had a hat on his head. Evidently, that's his thing. Everywhere he goes, he has a hat. But his classmates knew it, but I'm trying to figure out, well, why won't he rest his hat? You know, well, that's how my dad would say it back home, is you need to rest your hat, son. And he didn't, but that was part of his brand. Evidently, he didn't go anywhere without a hat on his head, but now I at least knew that was part of his brand. So I don't know if he thinks better, performs better, only if he has a hat on, but I wasn't there to change his mode of operation. But I was like, well, that's a different point of definition and distinction. I remember him, and I probably couldn't remember what anybody else had on other than the guy with the hat on. When I do a personal branding session, I lead them whether it's within our company. So I've done a session for our leadership. So anyone that's a director and above at Jamba Juice, I've done a session, it's about an hour and a half, 2 hours long, where we talk about making sure you understand your personal brand, writing your own personal brand story and mission. And this is sort of the flow chart that I go through. But key for me is all about making sure you know your brand. And many times we don't pull the mirror out of our purses, or if we don't stand in front of the mirror to honestly assess who we are. I think we do that, whether that's as an institution, and I think that's going to be the opportunity that Taylor has. That's why I think he's invested the time today, whether it was talking to the advisory council or the other boards, as well as to the students, but making sure you hold the mirror up and say, who is Longwood? Why are we looking the way we look? Is this the way we want to show up? And if not, what do we change about it? You know, so for those of you that take quite a bit of time to get dressed, or maybe you had the sibling that hogged the bathroom that just could never get out, they needed to get every hair in place. But that's because they are willing to take a look at what's maybe out of place, that doesn't look right to them, but they're willing to make those changes. And so for that, I would ask us to hold the mirror up to ensure that you know your brand. And there's some things that you don't always like what looks back, and you're just like, oh yeah, what do I do about that? Some things you can fix quickly, and other things you might need proactive for, right? So you have to find whatever help you can get over the duration of time. But once you know your brand, I believe you build your brand consistently, living your brand, promoting your brand, and I told you you were charged to promote the brand Longwood. So as you know who we are here at Longwood, then it's your job to be an advocate, an ambassador for the brand Longwood. That's your job to promote. I have some amazing people. Harold and I mean, when 400 people are in a room, it's not like you know all 400 people extremely, extremely well. So I can't say that we had grown up together and that we had done battle together in business, none of that. But the key idea is he's an amazing part of my PR group, because he's an amazing promoter of the brand Julie. I probably have him and Paul to introduce me anywhere I go. I'm sorry, I need to bring my group with me. These are my people that introduce me. And at the end of the day, when you leave the institution, Corey and I were talking for a second, I hope you know that your brand should continue to grow. If you didn't take the language class that you desired to take while being a student here, go back to school or take a class, study abroad. I mean, you have so many opportunities, especially as young as you are. Why not make sure you're growing yourself every day? Always be a student of life. And if you do that, it's amazing the journey that you'll go on. I mean, I've seen things and done things all because I was willing to plant myself in places that were uncomfortable. I did not have a pet, so I can't say I knew anything about dogs or cats. So no, that's not why they hired me at Purina, because I was a pet lover and knew anything about it, and I worked there 12 years. But you couldn't tell me about dog food that I didn't already know, because I listened hard to the consumers who did have dogs and that were very passionate about their pet owning experience. So you don't have to be deep into something if you're willing to be a student of that particular topic. All right, so here's a concept that was introduced to me at Procter Gamble. So for those of you that are in the world of marketing and want to do marketing and branding, all right, this is the Procter Gamble quick slide. I'll give you a couple more. If you were inside of the organization, there was an acronym, and they have a lot of acronyms. You never know what people are saying unless you're reading through the acronym book, because everything stood for something and you're like, what did they just say, right? So PI was all about the performance, your image, and your exposure. Every brand, every person needs to be clear on your PI, right? So I'm going to go through Jamba Juice to help you at least understand with a little bit more tangible depth as to what it means to understand your performance, your image, and your exposure. And if a brand that makes millions of dollars needs to have a PI, I'm crazy enough to always believe that what I do at work should be done at home. So my husband and I actually, we call it a summit meeting, but every year we sit down. If I take as much time as I do to do a planning meeting for Jamba Juice every year we have to do a marketing planning business meeting. Then we need to sit down at home to figure out, to do a Washington summit, to figure out what the Washingtons want to do. With 3 kids, you need to know where we're going, what we're doing. So we take the same kind of approach. He's the finance accounting guy, so he and Harold would be good friends. So he's on the money side trying to figure out which way we're building wealth, and then I'm over there trying to creatively determine what we're going to do with the kids and how do they be exposed and experience so many things. But it's all about your PI. So specifically, let's talk about the P within Jamba. So for those of you that have not had a Jamba experience, I would love to tell you there's one nearby. There isn't yet. Jamba is a 24-year-old company, and we were founded as a juice club, but most people know us as smoothie company, right? So we are a leader in health and wellness within juices as well as within smoothies. So after our founder started around a juice platform, we expanded to smoothies, and for those that are oatmeal lovers, I think it's the best food product that we have in our menu is the oatmeal. And it's around inspiring and simplifying healthy living. So everything that my team does, everything that we say, should cause you to be inspired about your own journey around better health and about greater wellness. That's what what's my mission? That's what's my rally cry. No matter how I say it in marketing, whether I tweet something, whether we post something on Facebook, whether it's a picture on Instagram, it doesn't matter. It's all about making sure that I deliver on the performance metrics. And when you start working, the secret at the end of the day, you can be as smart as you want. You could have placed well on any test. Procter Gamble actually used to require you to test in order to even be considered for a job there. So there was a lot of academic head thinking in the group, so everybody was smart. But at the end of the day, it's about what have you posted as results. If you don't perform, don't worry about your I and your E. It really doesn't matter. You need to focus on the P first. At the end of the day, that's what I've done consistently, is I've performed. I'll talk a little bit about, I was more of an old school type A, so I was a perfectionist until I had my daughter, and then she didn't seem to read the same book that I did, and she didn't follow my calendar, and she didn't do anything that I said do as a baby, so I was like, this isn't gonna work out too well if I'm gonna be rigid and be in control, and everything had to go a certain way. But once I learned to relax and be a little more flexible, and I call her my flower child. If you think of the 70s, when some of you may have been born, but at the other time, it was just, everything was peace, love, and happiness, and just free. That's my daughter. She's free. She wakes up in the morning and she's humming a song. Drives her brother crazy. We don't know what song it is every morning, but she's excited about being where she is. But at the end of the day, for me, it's about how I show up, how do I perform at home, at work, in my community, at church, wherever my brand is, you can expect excellence. And we'll talk a little bit more about my personal brand. The second one is around your I, and making sure for Jamba, it was about our image of commitment to healthy living. And so that looks like the juices that we have, the smoothies that we have, not only the product, but how we show up as a part of our community. Jamba, in the 830 stores, 60% of our store base are owned by franchisees. And so when somebody has put their family's life savings in your hands, if you didn't have a why do I do the best every day, I have a lot of people writing on the decisions that I make, and I want to make the best decision because they are committed to me as a brand, and we must be committed to healthy living because that's who is going to show up in our stores. And so we do a multitude of different things within our community. Anybody in here runner, loves running? Any runners in the house? Okay, so Jamba has, this year, we've sponsored 15 rock and roll marathons. So for those of you that like to run a lot, I was a sprinter, so I tell you, this 26-mile thing, I was like, that sounds too long. So, but I have done 2 half marathons, so it's within reach. But we believe that it's not just about selling you a great product and getting profit from that, but we're in partnership with you. I'm not guaranteed that if I sponsor the marathon, you're going to use Jamba as a part of your health regimen to make sure you're ready for the races. But for those of you that have actually run 26 miles, and you know that you need the best fuel in your body in order to make it to the finish line. And so that's a part of what we do at Jamba. We also have a program called Team Up for a Healthy America. And as our commitment, we partner with DonorsChoose.org in the sense that we know that I don't know about Virginia, if physical education has been cut out of many of the schools. Well, it has in many other states across the country. And so our children are suffering, and childhood obesity is a growing concern. And so with that, we've actually decided that if you would go online and pledge to do whatever it is that's a challenge. It could be that I'm going to take the stairs instead of taking the elevator. I'm going to drink water every day this week. I'm going to exercise between meetings or between classes. I'm never going to go more than 2 hours. I'm going to give up soft drinks, and I'm going to make sure I eat my fruit and vegetables. Whatever the challenge is, when you pledge, we actually give a donation that totals up to various dollars. This year's commitment was $100,000. And we then go back into communities and provide schools and communities with equipment. And it could be as simple as basketballs. But if you don't have a basketball, and that won't be the big thing, it's not a playground for every community. But if you get a basketball in the hands of third graders, they get excited. And they have a lot of energy to burn off. And so this just helps the school. If they don't have a physical education class, here's an opportunity for Jamba to be connected to our communities more than just saying, come to my store to buy me. And I think people are asking us to be authentic as brands, as companies. Not just, will you give me your money, but what are you doing with my money? And part of that is cause related. And so that's a part of our commitment to healthy living, is not just the food and the drinks that we have, but our commitment in the community. So the last part around E, how do you get exposure? So why would a brand like Jamba need exposure? Well, we need exposure because I don't have Procter Gamble budget anymore. I'm poor. God, I don't have I need a lot of zeros added. And I have some fierce competitors. We have competitors from the top and from the bottom. Everybody wants to be in the health and wellness space, and they figure if they add a salad or they add fruits and vegetables, they are now healthy. That's a problem for me, because I believe we make the best smoothies that anybody could ever want. And I won't name all the various competitors, whether they're Denny's, McDonald's, Burger King's, Panera's, you name them, they all seem to have a smoothie somewhere. But at the end of the day, they're not the same nutrients, the same product proposition that I believe that Jamba will provide. So I need some exposure. And since I don't have enough money to buy my way to GRPs, I need to find another way to have some impressions. Jamba spent a lot of time over our years around social and digital. And so in the social and digital world, we actually have about almost 1.7 million Facebook fans. So I do a lot on Facebook. We do a lot within Twitter, within Instagram, but we also, for those of you that are really big on your iPhones and your Androids, we're partnering in many different tests with Google Wallet. We also have tests with PayPal and, God bless you, and with ISIS to actually figure out payments that people would desire to do. So some of you don't even know what a checkbook is. But at the end of the day, some of us still prefer, I know I do, to get a receipt. So please swipe my card. Please give me my piece of paper that I know exactly how much was spent versus it going up into the cloud and they told me the cloud was holding my information and it was all secure. But you never know. Paul is now going to have all this cybersecurity and I'll feel better because Longwood is going to make sure that all my information that I can't see on a piece of paper is going to be all secure. So at the end of the day, we've partnered with any Twilight, I think I asked the class earlier today, any Twilight fans in the house? So last year when Twilight had their last movie, we partnered with Twilight. And so that was a new piece for us because, Summit Entertainment called us. And so we had, of course, a vampire smoothie that we made. It was blood red and the whole deal. And so we did some marketing to try to, because we weren't in the movie. So we're after the movie. But I was just glad to be in Hollywood. I couldn't afford it. So it was a lot cheaper to work that way than try to be inside of a movie. But that led us to being on the map. And once someone saw us affiliated with Summit, this year, Disney came to us. Not a bad little brand to be associated with. But Disney has been harnessing those entities that are most like their mission. And so they came to us because our kids' meal that we introduced in January was truly around the health definition and criteria that they had. And so they came out with a movie in August called Planes. And so we were a part of the Planes execution, and boy did Disney spend a lot of money, and they have a lot of celebrities, so I was able to attach myself to other celebrities that I didn't have to pay for, all in the name of Planes. So when you're trying to make sure that you're leveraging your I and your E, the image of Jamba was important before I exposed it to someone. You don't want to have your one opportunity to be presented when you're not ready, right? So that's why you have to always be ready. Because I always keep saying, what if at the airport, I'm sure she has on a private jet now, but at the end of the day, back in the day when I was having the first thought, I always wanted to be ready just in case I had the opportunity to bump into Oprah. Right? I was going to ask her for something. So I needed to know what it was. I'd probably only have 30 seconds and she'd probably have handlers around. But that's okay. I just wanted to be ready for my O opportunity. Haven't met her yet, but I'm still ready for my O opportunity. People, once they know you, they'll provide you opportunities like Harold did for me to be a part of the Longwood family when I otherwise may not have ever bumped into the opportunity to come here today or in the years to come. And so when someone else can be your publicity, your sort of voice, it just helps spread the word. And so I don't know if any of you are big Saturday Night Live fans. All right, so they actually did a spoof on Jamba. So if we can run the tape, I thought it would just be nice to let you see the brand through somebody else's eyes. Remember, it's about perception and reality. So it's not exactly like this in a Jamba Juice, but boy, it's not too far from the truth. So we won't watch the whole thing. We'll watch about a minute or so of Jamba.
Protein
You can stop it there, John. So it goes on. They literally had an amazingly great time with our brand. Now, you know how much money that would have cost me to be on national television for as long as that segment ran? That's when you have a good pie. I've performed very well. I think it surely doesn't hurt that we have a lot of Jamba Juices in LA, and so when the writers write, I had the opportunity to see a couple of actors this weekend, and one played in Harry's Law and The Practice, and they actually, Harry's Law, it was based out of Cincinnati. Well, there's no Jamba Juice in Cincinnati, but the writer put Jamba Juice in the storyline. So we find out about things real time. Friends may be in a movie and they're like, did you know Jamba was noted in the movie? When the game came back on BET, had no idea. My husband yelling from upstairs, turn on BET, they're talking about Jamba Juice. Literally, we've received more impressions free. I can't even always leverage them because I don't even know when they're happening, whether it's in movies, whether it's in television. But that's when your brand is getting exposure that's unbelievable. And even as an individual, when you do the right things, when your brand shows up, when you're truly leaving a mark and leaving a legacy, people will embrace you and tell your story and invite you to be a part of their journey, all because they heard that you performed a certain way, you have a certain image, and they want greater exposure for you on behalf of, say, Longwood, all right? So that was pie. That was the Procter Gamble quick deep dive, and they go through a much longer version of making sure you understand your pie, because we all wanted the top seat in the billion-dollar brand category, no matter which brand that was. There were 26 when I left, so $26 billion brands plus is not a bad place to be, but you need to make sure you're very clear that you deliver your P in order for you to get the exposure and the opportunities that you were seeking. So. Moving away from the brand of Jamba and a brand that I've done, I thought I would talk a little bit about who I am. So remember I told you that I created, and I actually will share, I've done it with MBA programs, with organization with the Black MBAs within Jamba. I've actually had it with a couple of girlfriends, a couple of other acquaintances. We'll just go into some restaurant or somewhere and we actually talk. And I've talked them through their personal brand. So if I gave you the full paragraph, almost a page, if I truncate it, my personal brand is about excellent service. So everywhere I am, you can expect excellence. I'm present in the moment. My phone could be blowing up right now. Something could be happening in California, and there were a couple of new things happening at the organization. But they knew where I was going to be, and I told them, I promise you there's somebody else that can always answer your question. The kids know it. That's why I thank goodness you have a dad who is at home with you. So unless the house is on fire and you have to run out and call a neighbor, I think your dad can answer the question. I don't have all the right answers. And once you understand that where you've been placed in the moment in time, today, tonight, this is where I was asked to be. This is where I was purposed to be. And therefore, you should get the best that I can give in this moment. And hopefully that's how I show up. When everybody talks about the brand Julie, somewhere excellence should be attached. And hopefully how I posture myself and what I do, that there's enough humility and a willingness to say, how best can I serve you? That's my brand. So what actually makes my brand me? My 5 Ps. So I'm a lot better since now I have 3 kids, and they too didn't read the book that I have about parenting and what we're supposed to do, and what time things are supposed to happen. But I do pursue excellence. My team knows that I've learned to be a little more relaxed as a leader, that everybody doesn't want an A+ out of their class. Some people are okay with a B. And even some people are okay with a C. Now, I actually don't know how that feels, because that's not a part of my DNA. But I respect that everybody didn't show up saying, I want to receive the best and challenge and charge myself to do that. But that's a part of my brand. So everybody that knew me at work, I take the extra assignment. I want that opportunity, because I believe if I get that chance, it'll help me be better somewhere down the road. And then I can time certain things in life. My mom and dad, especially my mom, she must have asked us. We were married 4 years before we had the first grandchild, and my sister didn't have anything other than a German Shepherd, so that didn't help. So they were looking for the grandchild, right? For 4 years I have to keep telling my mom, but we're working on a purposeful plan Needless to say, that had nothing to do with what she had in mind, but she is so delighted she has 3 now, but she had to wait because I was pursuing what I saw as my excellence around those opportunities that I didn't think would come all the time. Passion for what you do. I think you know every teacher, every professor knows when students show up whether you really care about being in class. I know you think they don't know. They know if you really are just checking the box. Just like you know if a professor is there to pick up a check. If they're really not genuinely interested in your learning, they have set schedules and it's just, I only have 15 minutes after class and that's all I can give you. My opportunity is that I'm available. My team, so we work a little bit differently, even though I'm in Cincinnati and they're in California. If you have a need and I have the available space and time at the time in which you call, my desire is for you to be better, for you to learn, and it always can't be on my time. So back to the service, I make myself available. That is not always how things work in corporations. But I believe just as kids can easily tell when things are right or wrong in the house, if you're not passionate about what you do, I would strongly urge you to find something else to do because it just shows up. If you're an athlete, if you don't like a certain sport, you really show up differently than when you're passionate. You like, give me the ball, right? I want to take the last shot. When you are truly excited about what you do, everybody can see it. You don't need to be a cheerleader, but it wears on you because where you are, it just emanates. You light up when you talk about that thing, when you do that thing. Have passion about what you do. For me, it happens to be marketing, even though I was pre-med, and no, I'm not a pediatrician, but I still love kids. I had 3 of them. So I just have passion in a different way around the family. Third P is around partnership. So I grew up in what would be a small family, but a big extended family. So I only have one sister, and so she was my friend and she was my enemy, and we just had to make up because we actually only had 1 bedroom because my mom is from a family of 15, and my mom is number 11, and sister that was youngest sister, number 14, she came and lived with us. And so the room that should have been my sister's was my aunt's, which means that my sister was in my room. And, you know, so you had to make friends real quick because in life you must find somebody to go on this journey with. You can't do it alone. I don't care how smart you are, how strong you are. In life, each one of us needs somebody. That's why you call it a life partner. If you're fortunate enough to find the person that genuinely loves you for all your good and while you're not so good, I highly recommend, I always say I recommend marriage when it's truly with the right person. If it's not, you should just walk away, let them just date you and just make it an exchange, but not anything that's a long-term commitment. But it's all about partnering. I partner with my agencies. I have expectations of them. I can't think of everything. I use a lot of sports analogies because my mom is a sports fanatic, I guess you could probably call her. If there's a sport, she's watching it right now on ESPN. If she's not at church, my mom is usually in front of the TV watching some sport. So those are her 2 things, church and sports. And no, we didn't have a brother, so I think that was a good thing because the poor boy probably couldn't dribble, couldn't shoot, couldn't hit, and it would have just been a bad thing. So this way, you didn't have to worry about it. But at the end of the day, for a partnership, you have to have somebody that's willing to tell you the truths of what they see, whether or not you're on track to the dreams that you've shared that you want to do and to receive, and someone to help you get there. So if you don't have a mentor, there are enough faculty members that I've met today alone that I charge you for your tuition alone. You should befriend a new faculty member if you haven't. They are here for you. You guys are missing your own opportunities, and it's your responsibility to find your life partners wherever they are in your journey. Don't miss those opportunities. I may not have stayed at Procter for a long time, but boy, I have a lot of partners that I lean in. And the alumni network of Procter is amazing. You don't have to be there 20 years. They treat you just as though you were part of the family, and many of them are CEOs of companies. So talk about the intel and the sharing that you can get just across that one company alone. Forget the house of Nestlé and the house of Jamba, even though we're not that big. There's still many more people that are franchisees. The guy in Chicago, he's our franchisee, and you guys know how big Chicago is, so he owns the 42 or 44 stores in Chicago. Let's just say he evidently has financial depth, right? So not a bad guy to know at the end of the day. The fourth one is a predisposition around leadership and action. So Clint found out early at lunch today that if you don't have a question for me, I'll have a question for you, and ultimately it may require you to take action. After tonight, it's important for you to do something about what you've learned or heard. Do something, whatever it is, it's your responsibility to take action. I have that orientation. My kids know we're not just wasting our Saturdays. We can have fun, but what are we doing on purpose? And I'll tell you a little bit more about them. Is one person at work said, I think I'd rather work for you than be your child. And that's probably true. I have high expectations, and at that point, I'm the judge. So you're right, you do what I say. At work, maybe I have to be a little bit nicer because you want to be a C student. Okay, got it. But on my team, I'm expecting to win, and I can't have anybody to hold us back because everybody is important. I tell my team, everybody's a starter. You know, I can imagine what I would say if I was on the Super Bowl team and I got a ring and never got in a game. What do they say? I was there? Heck, so were a lot of other people. They were in the stands, but you got a ring and you didn't do anything. You know, I just personally would love to just have a conversation with the ring-toting and probably very proud person that talks about the Super Bowl as though they ran a play. But I personally believe that it's all about what do you do right now? Because remember, we only have these tiny minutes in life. And what are you going to do with your tiny little minutes? And the last one is about people development. So I would hope that just my presence here alone is an indication of that part of my philosophy. I didn't have to know you, I knew Harold. And because he knew you, I believe there was an opportunity to share something. And my true desire, I would love for all of you to find something of value. But I told myself, if I only came for one person, whoever you are, I'm glad that I showed up and that I made the sacrifice to be here just for you. I don't know who you are, but I hope that that one person will be benefited and blessed because of that input, that insight that caused you to be a different person, a better person, a more encouraged person, a more inspired person, because Brand Julie was on campus. So those are my 5 Ps. That's what guides me. That's what I've been about since the beginning. My mom would say I've always been on purpose from the get-go. I'm a 7-month baby. And so she says, you've been in a rush since the beginning. And so in the 60s, it was not good to be in a rush because that meant that you were probably underweight. But I always believe that when you work in purpose and in divine order and assignment, in my family at least, it all works out. And so my mom actually, if anybody saw the movie The Help, my mom next year will celebrate her 50th anniversary working for the same family in a domestic capacity. And if anybody saw the movie The Butler, my dad actually was a butler. So I come from what I consider very real roots about working class people. And at the end of the day, my mom happened to work for a family that just so happened to make a donation to the hospital of incubators. And one of the first people to get to use an incubator was baby Spencer, me. And in the 60s, that just might not have been the way things would work, that the black baby would actually be the one to get to use the incubator, and surely not first. Because the family had paid for the incubators, they had a right to tell the hospital who would and wouldn't be in it. And so I was the recipient of being early, but I got to cook, as my mom says, I got to cook for 21 more days, compliments of the Gordons. So I'm grateful that you worked for the Gordons. The 5 C's. So I'll give you an example of the 5 C's. You can actually read them yourselves, but I'm going to go back to the pet food days of what do those 5 C's really mean. And I believe in leadership, you have to know what you stand for, because otherwise you'll fall for anything, is how my mom would phrase it. Be clear about where you stand on a thing. Well, the example I use relative to my character, the clarity of my conviction, I've had to learn how to allow people to have an opposing point of view. My point is I come prepared. I'm ready. It's not my fault if you didn't have your stuff together, right? Okay, well, that doesn't really work too well when you're trying to get everybody involved and engaged. But my point is, I knew the meeting was going to happen. Why aren't you ready with a counter opinion? And so I've had to learn as a leader that everybody doesn't speak up as soon or as readily, and so I need to work through that so I can allow them to find a voice. But I'm very clear about where I stand and what I think and why I think it. It's the scientist in me. Anybody that's ever had organic chemistry, once you've gone through the process of organic chemistry, I promise you, you think differently, or at least I do. But to my conviction and my courage, and I believe that you have to be willing to know your truths. Back to the mirror and standing up. My sister and I, we laugh because she's much lighter than I am. And so we used to say we're like night and day. Our personalities are probably like night and day. If she said left, my answer was always going to be right. So we have a very interesting sister relationship. But at the end of the day, you have to be willing to stand for what you believe in when you know that the other person, remember when she's my friend, you have to know your friend is going to answer the question differently, which in my mind would get us in trouble. So you got to be courageous and say, no, the curfew was 11 o'clock. We need to be making our way back home. Because she didn't really seem to have the same concern about what might happen if we showed up at 11:01 at my mom and dad's doorstep. I was worried whether or not we could get in. But to the example within pet food, you guys probably won't remember, but in the early 90s, there was a brand called Healthy Choice, still out in the marketplace, but health, everything was green. So Healthy Choice was a very deep green packaging. That was the beginning of health movements. I mean, everybody was going to the gym. Lifetime Fitness probably didn't even exist at that time, but everybody was going to, Vic Tanny's, I think, was probably a big brand at that particular time. But everything was about health and wellness, and everything was green. Well, in the Purina portfolio, I was given a small brand, so I wasn't on a chow yet, because that was Mecca. If you were on dog chow, puppy chow, or cat chow, you had arrived. They evidently showed you that they trusted your intuition and your vision. So I wasn't there yet. I was on Fit and Trim. But here's the important thing about Fit and Trim. You always have to know your value. It was the most profitable brand in the portfolio. So if I could sell more Fit and Trim, somebody was going to have to take note that the numbers were going up, compliments of this green bag of dog food, right? And all dog food in my mind was not equal. So I now had to make a change. So we had a campaign, and it was working. We were selling products. So it wasn't that the brand was in trouble. My point was there just had to be growth, and that's one of the words that Paul has mentioned a lot around sort of the 7 elements of what you guys are focused on is around growth. And so I saw more than what was already there. For those of you that have dogs, 60% of all dogs, at least at that time, were overweight or likely to become overweight. So obesity was a problem there as much as we're focusing on it now with children. So, I mean, 1 out of 2 dogs are going to be overweight and they need my product. So I figured I needed to change my campaign, because the campaign, where I got the insight, once again, those that are researchers, I told you, the ones that were there earlier, I take 2 people into most meetings with me, my finance person and my consumer researcher, 2 most critical partners that I have in the organization. Well, my consumer insight was behind a focus group mirror and looking at the people who we were talking to. And the campaign was called Fat Dog ? Well, here was the insight. These overweight dogs had overweight owners. And calling their baby fat, nobody ever says there's a fat baby, even if that baby has rolls upon rolls, right? You don't hear any mother saying, oh yeah, that's my son, the fat one. Nobody says that. You know, I mean, it's just beautiful rolls, you know? So how could you say that their dog was fat? We didn't know that. It was a true fact that they were fat. But change the campaign to heavy isn't healthy. But I need you to take action. So there were 2 things that we did. I went back to history. If you go back into history, you'll find jewels and nuggets there. You don't have to start from white space all the time. Well, someone else had already come up with something called the rib check. And it was basically putting your hands around the dog to understand that if you could not feel the dog's ribs, your dog was probably overweight. Remember, I need you to go buy dog food now. I don't have time for you to go to the vet and decide that you can pay for it and all that. I need chop chop. You got to go, and I need money into the coffer right away. So if you can do the rib check, we did that. So you're in stores, if you go to Costco a lot, you know, they always got the samples and you can eat your way through Costco and be full when you're done. Okay, so I had to figure out how to do this for pet food, because you're not trying to, well, some people do eat their dog and cat food to try it out or whatever, but minus those people. The point was we had some huskies. I don't know if anybody owns a husky, but we had husky dogs, and I had the R&D group to work with the other scientists, and we put ribs, if you will, inside of these husky stuffed animals, and that's what I demoed. I demoed that we called it Give Your Dog a Healthy Hug. So while you're shopping, who could turn down a stuffed animal, right? So it was a beautiful black and white husky. And so that was the rib check. But the concept there was, if you understand that your dog is overweight, I need you to come and buy Fit and Trim, because we are there for healthy dogs, both in weight loss and weight maintenance. Because remember, I need you to keep doing it. It's like anybody, if I just get you for one time, that's not a good revenue stream. I need you to keep coming to me, because it's easier after I've made the investment in you once. And so that's what we did with Fit and Trim. To this day, I've had 2 different times since I've left Purina where the brand manager on Fit and Trim has called me and said, what happened that year? That year was the year I changed from fat dog to heavy isn't healthy. It was more of a concern because I started pointing arrows at all the things that could happen to the dog. So whether it was arthritis or the dog could have some other kind of heart problem, because overweight, the dog was going to have some kind of health potential problem. But I just called them out and just brought it to their awareness, hold a mirror up for the dog's sake. And then the small little thing for those that are on the retail side, I actually had a friend that was working real hard with me at Sam's. So a small thing called distribution really works to your advantage, not just selling off of the distribution you have. And Sam's at that time was a formidable competitor in the club space. So yeah, by the way, if I could sell a 50-pound bag of this dog food, that really helped generate some profit, because now you're going to stay with me as you see that Fido is running like she's never run before and life is great. But I had to take this proposition to our president of the company. That's where conviction comes in. I know what the consumer said. I believed in it. I know what the R&D team told me. But will you stand when questioned for what you're recommending? That's the time and that's the test of clarity in your vision for the brand. I knew all the facts, so the scientist in me had it well written and documented. But would you be courageous enough to stand when questioned and maybe even challenged? Because somewhere, I didn't know the politics of the company. Somebody probably was the person who launched Fit and Trim and probably came up with Fat Dog. So here I am hijacking their proposal. But that, for me, was the beginning of a lesson that I think I've now repositioned 3 other brands. And right now, Jamba is going to, I call it a refinement. I won't call it a true repositioning. But that was a beginning lesson on dog food that allows me to now go into much larger companies with greater things at stake. As an officer of a company, to say, I had a little bit of monopoly money time. Well, you guys probably don't even know what monopoly is, but anyway, for those in the front 2 rows, monopoly money that I could play with, that it didn't cost me a lot to learn what leadership looked like in my 5 C's. But those were the values, those are the things I think that had me to stand out from any of the other brand managers within Purina, because it's a noticeable difference to the CFO when the balance sheet looks more so positive, right? You give me a thumbs up, Harold? Yeah, okay. So at the end of the day, when you can do things, that's the P of pie. That's performance at its best, because I'm making sure that I live my 5 C's. So there are a couple books that I've enjoyed over a course of time, but there have been several that, there's one book, if you haven't read, it's called Gung Ho, and it's about change. But in it, it talks about animals. And so a guy that works with me, he decided to put the penguins up. There's a book with penguins, if you really, another business book called Our Iceberg is Melting. So if you really like animals, these are easy reads. So from Gung Ho to Our Iceberg is Melting, good principles. But there are 4 pieces within the lessons I think I learned, and I'm going to back this one up to Emory University. So in all things, I've already talked about the learning aspect of what you should find in life's lessons, but the other piece is practice. Anybody play an instrument? Right, so my 3 kids are taking piano, and my son, the oldest son, is actually learning how to play saxophone. It sounds like a bunch of noise right now, but I'm sure it's going to get better. But he's learning. The point is he has to practice, and that's what I always say. I haven't heard anybody practice today. You can't show up to a public opportunity without some private moments. I used to do a lot of pageants, a lot of orations. And the key idea, my mom was like, and so how many times have you practiced? She says, Julie, your public victory is preceded by private victories. She says, so when you say that speech and you say it well, act like you've been there before. But if you've never practiced to know, that was good, Julie, that was a good speech. then it will be the first time that you've ever done that. For those that love basketball, I promise you, or even golf, I promise you, whoever your favorite player is, whether it's Wade, Kobe, whoever within your arena of basketball, or if it's Tiger or anybody else that's hitting another kind of ball, they didn't show up on the course or the court for the first time saying, I'm going to take this shot and I hope it will go in. Hope is not a strategy. We say that often in corporate America. It just isn't. Luck is one thing, and back to sports again. My kids are big into NASCAR because at Gillette I had the opportunity to work on a lot of sports, and so I didn't know anything about NASCAR before I went to Gillette, but we watch every Sunday, and I follow it. As soon as I got off the plane, I had to see what was happening and whether Team 48, Lowe's, Jimmy Johnson, how well we were doing. At the end of the day, it's all about practice. Jimmy is lucky on many Sundays. I promise you, there are some things that happen on the track that is about luck. But he's one of the most prepared athletes that I've ever seen. I didn't know what went into driving a car and making left-hand turns for 400 miles. It's more than just seemingly driving. It's the amount of speed and the reaction time is impressive. But Jimmy spends a lot of time practicing with Chad and what that car will do. He knows when it's right, when it's wrong. The third word, and I think I told you guys about it before, is about being intentional. Why be here if you're not going to be intentional about what you do, about the time that you give? I actually, at work, people know, I don't let you waste my time. I used to just, you're thinking to yourself, man, I just lost 30 minutes. I don't know what they're talking about at this point, but they surely are wasting my time. But this is your life. This is the time in your life that you can't get back. Don't misuse it, you not misuse it, and don't let other people. So be intentional about what you expect to get while here at Longwood. Hold the whole university accountable for your experience because they have a promise to you and you have a promise to them. The last piece is about transparency. I think that's another word that we've used as well as being authentic. We need to be very transparent. Well, at Emory University, being in Atlanta, back in the 80s, so I graduated in the late 80s, we had a little bit of a racial problem on our campus. And in Atlanta, the city of Dr. King and nonviolence, let's just say nonviolence was not exactly what the student body was looking for. There was bad choices made by a fraternity and ultimately by our school newspaper called The Wheel. And when I came back from one of my chemistry classes, I actually had 36 messages on my phone. So it was a tape recorder at that time. So I'm just playing. I'm like, what must be going on? And let's just say we were not willing and ready to be happy about that. So what do you do when everybody is mad, ready to do something other than nonviolently protest about what you have? So I had to call the president, and I'm just like, we have a problem, Houston. We need to do something. And I'll give President James Laney all due credit to have a bunch. He didn't have a large number of African Americans on our campus. I had 51 in my freshman class. However, when a whole group of people are mad, that's not the time you want to bond with them, right? So President Laney showed up, came to the Black Student Alliance house, and we had to have a conversation to make sure we understood what the problem was. But my whole piece in life is don't bring me problems if you don't have solutions. I'm real good at, I can see things just as well as anyone else. So it's great to identify what the problem is, but do you have any ideas about what we should do about the problem that sits before us? And so that's what we decided to do. I was given the opportunity that in a time of true challenge, Dr. King talks about the measure of the man is not in the time of comfort and convenience, but in the time of challenge and controversy. Well, I think that was challenge and controversy if I'd ever seen it as a junior at the university, and I now have several. We had a lot of other universities, Georgia State, University of Georgia, Morehouse, Spelman. Let's just say we may have been small in numbers, but we had a lot of cousins that could come over from other universities that could help express their lack of excitement over what had transpired. So how do you lead when things are not the way you want? That was not what I signed on for when I said I'd run for president of the Student Alliance. But what I did was I partnered, back to one of my Ps, I partnered with the president of the student government. Teresa Burris was her name. Amazing woman, because now she has to stand courageously with me. Teresa and I decided that we were going to have a day of mourning. It happened that it was in October. And so I figured for those people that were not going to be able to embrace what we were doing, I would actually use the month to work to my advantage. So it happened to be sort of around the same week of Halloween. So we had the faculty, staff, the students, anybody that wanted to participate with us. The point is, for our community, our Emory community, to find ourselves at such a racial impasse, we needed to do something to express that there was a problem, but two, what were we going to do about it? So I also believe that you have to find a way to be serious, but also allow people to engage with you. And so what we did was we called a funeral home. So John, you would love that piece. So to have a funeral home, they had a hearse to come up. We had a casket, and we went to the student union. And so we had a procession, and those that wanted to wear black wore black. We had balloons all over our quadrangle, so that was like the place where all the classes were. And so we had the balloons on the quadrangle. And ultimately, we had a moment of mourning. And what we decided as a group of students is that we were going to bury all these things that were divisive, that was breaking up the harmony that we felt existed at Emory University. And so we ultimately had white crosses, and you could put whatever ism you were faced with that you saw and that you wanted to bury, and we put it, just as you would be viewing a body in a casket, we allowed you to make the processional, put the cross of whatever that thing was that was not good for our university in the casket, and we gave it a ceremony. And it was our way to say, one, we were mad about it, but two, we needed to move on because there needed to be a time of healing. We had work to do, and we didn't have time for riots and anything else. That would not be Dr. King's legacy, to sit here in Atlanta and now burn up Emory University. That wouldn't be a part, not on my watch anyway, for that to happen. And I can't tell you the kind of results that Teresa and I were able to do, the conversations that we had with the president's councils, with our own student body, because I just think people didn't know the things that they had done, the damage that had been done, and people needed to have some forgiveness because some people were genuinely upset that they had hurt another classmate that deeply, but that we needed to find a way to bring our communities back together again. And I would say that was probably one of my challenging times, but I learned enough that when I get into some corporate situations where things are not so good, and you have moments where people will actually point fingers just because they don't want it to point this way, they'll point it that way, you have to figure out what you're going to do in those moments. And as a leader, people are going to follow you based upon the choices that you make. And you can either bring a lot of people with you in a positive way, or you can derail the objective and move us into a negative way. So this is the reason why I sing. This is the family on the left, Mark, Markayla, Sean, and Joseph. And of course, being a good mom, I wasn't able to take child number 2, who's in the white jacket, Sean, to see Jimmy at the Brickyard in Indianapolis. He was at a summer camp, so that didn't work out. But being a true fan, he decided he wanted to see Jimmy before the chase was over. So as a good mother, I drove 5.5 hours to Chicagoland. Never been to the track, so I decided to take child number 3. And so we all went to see Jimmy, who's in the middle. The handsome guy in the middle is Jimmy Johnson, driver of Team 48. That's only 3 points behind the leader, Matt Kenseth, in the chase to the Nextel Cup on his way to 6 championships, according to my son. And to the right, my daughter actually this summer had the opportunity to participate in People to People. I don't know if anybody is a People to People alum, but she went on the Celtic Heritage Tour and had an amazing time learning a lot about herself, but learning about other countries, being able to see the world with a bigger lens of life, things that she had to decide that she couldn't call home to ask mom or dad, what should she do? She had to make friends along the way. She stayed with the family for 3 days. So now you have to really embrace that, okay, you don't like my cooking? Let's try this on. They really probably don't cook what I cook. But at the end of the day, I believe there's a leader in each one of us. So the middle child, he's the one that wants to be an astronaut, stated that since he was 3, and he has purpose. He's more high-strung than I am. I'm like, how about we not go for the A+, let's just go for straight A's, right? But he's the perfectionist. But my daughter, she's a little more laid back. Remember, she's a flower child. So I've actually provided her the opportunity to make sure she sees herself as a leader. We know what Sean will do. He's at the front of the line. He has a purpose. He has a plan. He has a strategy of how we're going to win. He hates losing. We've been working on that. But at the end of the day, his sister, they both were in Taekwondo. And for anybody that's ever taken Taekwondo, the interesting piece is they have to spar. In addition to breaking the boards, you have to spar against like 2 people or 3 people. Well, being the happy child that she is, you have a mouthpiece in and you got all this guards and shield around you, right? My daughter is sparring, smiling. Because why would she not be? The happy child is trying to show the grandmaster that she can fight while smiling. I'm like, it's not working, Markayla. You have to look like you're mad in order for you to be able to make it to the next belt. So needless to say, it took her a year longer to get there. But she's learned to find her own voice as a leader. And sometimes great leadership looks like fellowship. But if we only all embraced, and to the point, helping Taylor with the work that he has as a new president, each one of us has an obligation to help him around the mission and the vision that he sets forth. And so I believe that you have to speak things into existence. So there are a couple things that I'm going to leave you with on the next 2 slides that are things I told you being my child might be harder than being someone that works for me on my team. So they have to affirm, they make an agreement with me every single morning. And so one of the affirmations they make is, today I will make good decisions. I will be a leader, not a follower. I will focus and I will finish. So when they come home and they have a write-up and there's an issue, I just want to know what happened along the contract, because you can't tell me that somebody else got you in trouble. Because you told me you were leading, not following. So you know what you stand for. And I usually always tell my son when he goes on Boy Scout camps, because he's working to be that first black astronaut who has his black belt, actually also has his Eagle Scout, and he also plays an instrument. So remember, he's a purposeful child. So when he does all of that, like getting into NASA is going to be easier than all of those other feats, but who am I to change his position and thought that he can get into NASA like the snap of his finger? But at the end of the day, I want them to affirm within their own space every morning that they can do whatever they set out in their minds to do. And if you look to the right, you probably can't see at the top, but this is their second affirmation. So the first one was their contract with me. I just want you to verbalize what you're going to be and how you're going to show up wherever you are in class. And hopefully that's a good thing for the teachers in their lives. But the other one is just a proverb that I found. And it's about making sure you're conscious of how you speak and what you do. It says, watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, it becomes your character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny. All from a single thought, your destiny is tied. And so I want my children to understand, however long I'm here, whether it's to be the 100-year-old Willard Scott celebration of the 100th birthday or not, may they know with truth and with pride that these are the things that are there. I do believe that every person has good in them. I don't care how you show up. I do believe that. I have to repeat that to myself sometimes on certain teams. I'm like, there's good in them, Julie, there's good in them. But sometimes people don't show up as good as they really are. But if we're willing to give each other the benefit of the doubt and say that I'll start you with the belief that you are good. I heard someone mention, an academic, that said at the beginning of every semester or trimester, depending on what you're on, everybody started off with an A. And what you then did was prove to the professor whether you were an A student or not. So that's what I tell my kids. So you started with an A. Everybody started on the same thing. Everybody was a valedictorian when they walked into class. And all you decided to do was whether or not you wanted to hold that rank and that status. So you got goodness in you. I think it only takes a spark. If you decide not to boil the whole ocean, I charge you just to spark and ignite good things, visionary things into the lives of others, into your communities, into your organizations. You don't have to do the heavy lifting of the whole thing. Just do your part. And many of fires, and now working for a company in California, there are a lot of fires in California. And it all started from the spark of something that somebody may not have been paying attention to. And so I ask you to ignite something in each other, in Longwood, into Farmville, wherever it is, wherever your path in life takes you, make sure that you're sparking something in each other. Say what you mean and mean what you say. I don't understand why people just talk and they don't seem to have a place of reference of what it is that I can count on them for. Everybody on my team knows what they can count on me for, and I hope I know what I can count on them for. So be true to the promises that you make at the end of the day. I'm a firm believer, for those of you that grew up on a farm, my mom and dad did, so I believe in the sowing and reaping principle. You are not going to sow a seed and get a different kind of fruit. off of that seed than what it was actually created to be. Everything in life came from a seed. You will be that which you were created to be, and so you're going to reap what you start sowing. And if you don't put good things in the ground, good things just don't have a way of coming up. So I charge you to be really mindful of the things that you let in, the people that you let into your garden. Don't let them plant bad seeds. If that's not who you are, don't allow them to give to you their issues. Not in my garden. These are the things that I stand for, so I'm not going to have a harvest day of things that I can't even identify. The last one is, there is a responsibility. And I told you all were charged at the beginning. But I believe that when you've been given much, much is required of you. So for all of the skills, the gifts, the talents that you've been already endowed with, for the learning that you have, for the many people that will never work or even but beyond work, but actually matriculate within an institution, you're sitting where somebody would love to be. And never take anything for granted, because there's somebody that would trade places with you in a heartbeat. And so with that, you have a responsibility. You're here, somebody else isn't. And so for their sake, you should study a little bit harder, aim a little bit higher, because that's what we do in the circle of life. So these were questions that I had, because remember, a good marketer has to let you have homework, right, to do. What's your personal brand? If you don't know it, what is it that you do? How well do you know who you are? Are you holding the mirror up for yourself? What's your North Star that's guiding your destination? What are your values? What's your legacy here at Longwood? I think we talked through that. What's your unique and sustainable advantage? How am I going to tell you apart from any other student in this room, from any other faculty member in this room? And if not now, when? And if not you, who? It's not somebody else's responsibility. The neighbor next to you is not responsible for what you were created and uniquely designed to do. My sister can't do my job, and I can't do hers. She was here for one purpose, and I'm here as a 7th-month baby for another purpose. And so, closing thought. It's from Francis Bacon. It's just something that I ran across. I mean, I don't even remember which speech I was giving. It was just a quote that I came across. I haven't had the kids to put this one in their affirmations in the morning just yet. But it's one that I thought, if you wanted to Google it and store it away for those that like quotes. He says, everyone has a desire to win, but only champions have the desire to prepare. It's not what we eat, but what we digest that makes us strong. It's not what we gain, but what we save that makes us rich. It's not what we read, but what we remember that makes us learned. And it's not what we profess, but what we practice that gives us integrity. I do thank you for your time, your attention, and for the opportunity. And maybe these timing minutes be worthwhile for the time that you've invested in me. So thank you very much.